Welcome to Politically Incorrect. It's been exactly a week since the union budget was presented, a budget that was being seen as this government's last big opportunity to turn the economy around after a year when everything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong, with high inflation, high interest rates and falling markets in the rupee. So did coalition compulsions prove too much? Even the Prime Minister admitted this week that tough decisions were hard to take. To top it all, the rail fare hike also had to be rolled back. Well, the question we're asking tonight is whether the UPA too has completely failed the economy. You can join us on that debate. You can tweet us at NDTV at the hashtag PI to your comment. Let me go straight across to Shaupan Dasgupta. A series of missed opportunities?
Well, you see, when any country confronts a serious crisis, it's the responsibility of the government of that day to take very purposeful action. We saw that in 1991 when Indian economy was in such dire straits that gold had to be mortgaged, we had to go running with the begging bowl to the IMF, etc. Certain very major radical steps were undertaken by the same Prime Minister who was then Finance Minister. Now, what a departure it is from that time, from 1991 to 2012. When you have a falling GDP, which has been systematically falling, you have a fiscal deficit which is escalating all the time, you have expenditure going berserk and not keeping pace with revenue, you have the confidence of industry waning. At that time, you put in a budget which has, to say the least, been an exercise in fudging. I can understand there are coalition compulsions. But if the only purpose of the budget was to ensure that it is passed.
So what could have been done that was not done?
Firstly, you could have been truthful. What this budget did was, it was based on a series of untruth assumptions. For example, the deficit. You had, in the last year, a projected deficit of 4.6%. The reality was 5.9%. A huge gap. It's not something which can be, and probably when the final figures come in, it'll probably touch 6. This time you said, we'll have a 5.1%. And the reality suggests that you're likely to go up to 7%. Why? Because you have seriously underestimated expenditure and you have taken revenue at its most optimistic scenario, keeping in mind that everything will be hunky-dory, that will be growing at 7.6%, that industry will be going at 14 or 15%. These are the assumptions which have been taken. Just to take one example, your oil subsidies this year was 1.40 lakh crores. What is the budgetary estimate? It's 45,000 crores. What does that mean? That you're going to dismantle the administered price mechanism for diesel. Do you have the political competence? Do you have the political will? Do you have the political wherewithal to be able to do it? If you don't have it, why are you projecting something which is blatantly an untruth?
All right, based on a series of lies, Manishankar, I respond to that.
Coupled with the performance, which is causing this total lack of confidence in our economy. And today, where at one time we were supposed to be the rising, emerging power, once again we are seeing as someone who missed the bus.
A missed opportunity?
First, I'd like to congratulate Shaupan Dasgupta on his rhetoric, and then come now to the facts. The fact of the matter is that this economy, which is supposed to be collapsing, in Shaupan's view, is one that over the last 4 years, that is after the onset of the global crisis, has had a compound annual growth of 7.7%, compared to under 2% in the United States of America, under 1% in Europe. In comparable economies to ours, such as the BRIC states, we have Brazil growing at 3.9% and Russia at 1.3%. So the idea that merely because our growth rate has slipped from what it was 1 year ago to what it is now, that therefore disaster is looming, is just the kind of hyperbole which I've learned to expect from him. Secondly, nobody is trying to tell a lie. In fact, there has been an out of the way, quite exceptional effort to tell the truth as bluntly as we can. No attempt has been made to hide the fact that the fiscal deficit slipped from 4.6% to 5.9%, which is quite considerable. But on the other hand, I didn't hear Shopan Dasgupta trumpeting at the beginning of 2011-12 that oil prices were going to go up to the extent to which they went. Who could have predicted that that was what was going to happen at a time when it looked as if there might be some moderation in these oil prices? And if oil prices go through the roof, I know that according to the economics of Mr. Dasgupta, let the poor get it in the neck. That's his whole policy. Let the poor get it in the neck. He doesn't care. He thinks that good economics is what is composed of imposing burdens on people. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that point of view. I believe that it is the duty of a government in a country as desperately poor as ours is. All these illusions that he has that we are an emerging super economic power are nonsense when one considers how many people in this country are poor by any measure, whoever makes them, and certainly vulnerable beyond that poverty measure. Now, for these people, we ought to have headroom in a budget to provide funds for social security and anti-poverty programs.
And do you see this budget doing that?
And that headroom has been brilliantly provided by our government by consistently reducing the debt to GDP ratio. That's the crucial thing. Are we going as a result of our own efforts, or are we like China, fueling, like China now and the Greenspan program, which led to the disaster on Wall Street in the United States? Are we fueling it with debt? We're not. We have actually succeeded in reducing the debt to GDP ratio from 85% when the NDA and his friends there were ruling the country to a mere 63% now. And when you take our 63% and look at China's 150%, then you realize that it is bogus money that is fueling the growth of China. Now, we can put in bogus money and get bogus growth. But real growth, sustainable growth, is when your economic policies are rooted in realities and not rooted in dreams. And then the ratio of the interest payments that have to be made to the budgetary receipts is another critical factor which determines headroom for being able to spend on non-capital intensive projects. That is social sector and other such projects. There, where the budgetary receipts, where interest as a proportion of budgetary receipts was 46% when the NDA was in power, it has come down now to 31%.